Of course, my mic was muted. Hello, everyone. I'm trying to get situated here. So, ha, hijikishna hini karagiwina. I just greeted you in the Ho-Chunk language. My name is Trisha Ettringer, and I'm an enrolled member of the Winnebago Tribe of Nebraska. I am the current Director of Operations for Great Plains Action Society. I am here alongside with the founder of Great Plains Action Society, Sakawis. And Sakawis, if you would like, I'm going to add you to the stream. If you would like to introduce yourself real quick, and then we'll get right into it.
Yes, my name is Sakawis, also Christine Nobis. I'm Plains Cree Salto of the George Gordon First Nation. Tonsi Mio Ponepiti Gisgao. Good morning. And Cree, and I am the founder of Great Plains Action Society, and we are here to do a show dedicated to the issues that are the crisis of MMI, missing and murdered Indigenous relatives in Iowa and Nebraska. Trish, you're still muted.
Gosh darn technology, no. Before we get into today's live stream, I would like to warn our followers that some of the content talks about violence. Please practice self-care before, during, and after the show. If you are watching in the area of the Omaha and Winnebago Reservation, please contact local health departments such as the Carl T. Curtis Building, Morningstar Counseling, and the Winnebago Public Health Department. If you are watching from afar, please contact any national hotlines that you feel comfortable with. There are lots of them, so.
And we're going to be comments later too.
Yes.
We'll be on the show, and we do have them posted on our Facebook page and our Instagram page if you would like to take a look at that as well. And we don't necessarily do land acknowledgements here at Great Plains because we feel that as Indigenous people, being here and doing what we do is a land acknowledgement in and of itself. We do also want people to be able to recognize the land that they're on. I'm also like living on like outside of my territory on like land of the Iowa and the Meskwaki. And we're going to just allow everybody to make that acknowledgement if they want.
Thank you, Christine, or Sakawis. If you are currently a victim of sexual abuse or domestic violence, there are different hotlines that we will have later on in the show to that you can have those as a resource. Today, we are here to talk about the ongoing epidemic known as MMIR. It is widely known as MMIW as well. MMIR stands for Missing and Murdered Indigenous Relatives. We feel that it is important to be inclusive of all, so we like to use MMIR. According to the National Congress of American Indians, 4 out of 5 women will experience violence in their lifetime or already have. 1 out of 2 will have experienced sexual violence. Non-Native perpetrators are hardly ever prosecuted and brought to justice. The procedure and how to report a missing person often fails our Native communities in the U.S. The Center for Relationship Abuse Awareness states, quotes from a report, gender-based violence, including sexual assault and physical violence, is committed against 78% to 85% of Indigenous Two-Spirit individuals. In addition to the systematic racism directed towards them by society, Two-Spirits are also a target to harmful patriarchal beliefs regarding gender identity. These are some of the facts surrounding the epidemic. Please watch today as we speak to the families of Ashley Aldridge, Lanice Blackbird, Rita Papaki, and my own family. Please keep these families in your prayer. If Jess would like to start our, we have a poem by Sun Rose Ironshell, and we will present that now.
Save my missing sisters. I am here to break the chains that have systematically wiped away our existence. systematically led you to believe that it is your American duty to erase my oyate. You're sitting pretty petty on your throne built from the hearts of my people, and I know you can't bear to look at me. I am the reminder of your parents' devious atrocities. For you fear the blood karma to be fallen upon you. You shun it, praying that this too shall pass. Straight front, with your fake facade, hiding your real fear. Your cowardice can't bear to look at me, as if I'll disappear. I live deep inside your guilt, in the pit at the bottom of your throat. How dare you pass off your consequences to your kids? You are supposed to make life better for them, yet here I stand, defending the sacred for your own children. Standing where you failed, yet you claim to own this land. You believe there are no repercussions for your actions, like there will never ever be another 7th generation. Now, you can't bear to look at me. But from this moment on, you will never forget me. Try to bind me in chains, red tape me, dressed in your army fatigues, rape me. I am the mother. This earth is in my blood, and my blood is in this earth. And oh, how these stars and stripes regret me, failing to kill me, but you can't bear to look at me. You go on gloating like I've never defeated you before, but my roots run deep, steady reaching beneath. And I am here to break the chains that have systematically depleted me. My legacy is locked behind your golden gates. And yeah, I got trust issues, diamond cuts and bloody tissues. I've been certified and tested while you've doubled up and invested. 10,000 times overdue your whole system's revenue. So the rent must be paid. Over 4,000 lives you have claimed, with their tied hands and running blisters. This is the call out to the world. No more stolen sisters. Daki AP, hello my relatives. My name is Sunrose Ironshell, MC Changu, and Ogallala Lakota. What MMIW and MMIR means to me starts with our self-image and really reclaiming our self-image so that others don't take it and twist it. So America has systematically taught its own citizens to erase us. Within our education system, especially in Hollywood. Within the Hollywood industry, they've taken our indigenous women and hypersexualized her. So it starts with us reclaiming our own image, showing up to all these non-indigenous spaces dressed in our ribbon skirts with our hair combed and braided, because they've never seen Indians like that before. So we got to bring it. And when we do that, we reclaim our image. So out there in the world, they believe we don't exist. And so when we are there and they see us, they're allowed to go back into their communities and say, wait, no, I seen Indians. I seen them marching. I seen them in Sioux City. And we start to change that stereotype that we don't exist.
Let me unmute myself here. So that was a poem and an interview that we did with Sunrose. She was so gracious to come by yesterday to help us with our PPE distribution and kind of speak on that on the MMIR topic. So Christine, so we both have had this conversation about how are we going to hold Biden administration accountable. They've made all these promises to the tribal nation, one of them being that they're going to tackle down the crisis on violence against women, children, and elderly. We created the first 100 Days of Change campaign, and basically we're just trying to draw attention to the things that we need to talk about the most, and MMIR is definitely on top of that list to kind of talk about Christine, would you like to introduce our youth interns?
I would. I think that our youth have been doing some really great things, and I'm really proud to have them on the show today. It's an honor to introduce Keely Driscoll and Alexandria Flanders, who have been doing a lot of stuff this past week. And they are here today to talk about the work they've been doing to uplift and give power to this ongoing crisis. And I'm going to leave it up to these two right now to introduce themselves and have a conversation about the powerful work they've been doing.
Hey everybody, so my name is Alexandria Flanders. I'm an enrolled citizen of the Winnebago tribe of Nebraska, and I'm a student here at the University of Omaha, Nebraska as well. I started working for GPAWS, I think it was, well, I know it was this year, but I mean last year we started doing stuff with Vote Mob, so I mean basically, but not really. Anyways, I'm really glad to be on the team just because I'm able to, not only does it help me in the future, but like as somebody who plans to go to law school, it helps me bring out like the truth in a lot of situations that GPAWS covers.
Hello everyone, my name is Keely Driscoll, also Jagimo Akwenetishis, and I'm 20 years old and I've been working with GPAWS along with Alexandria, and we both kind of came into this together. And, you know, we're working on this 100-day campaign to hold the Biden-Harris administration accountable. And I really think it's just empowering to be able to work on something like this, to be able to do our research, to do interviews and participate in this kind of work, because it's impactful. And, you know, in our communities, we know someone and we know families that have been affected by this. And as youth, you know, youth are affected, Indigenous youth are, you know, affected by this as well. And that's why we are using missing and murdered Indigenous relatives, you know, to be more inclusive for these populations that, you know, are also affected, you know, beyond MMIW, which is an epidemic. So, yeah, and I put together this week some resources because, you know, as a community member, it's hard to know what can we do specifically to help our communities. And for me, what I have found is the very first step that we can all take to help our communities is just to normalize talking about it, normalize sharing these resources, and, you know, just make our spaces open so that people who are affected can come forward and, you know, hold these people accountable for what's going on and for the epidemic going on. So here is the MMIR missing and murdered Indigenous relatives as an extension off of the foundational grassroots activism of MMIW that I was talking about. And here we have the interview that Alexandria held earlier this week. So Alexandria, do you want to talk about that a little bit?
Yeah, absolutely. So I really wanted to interview somebody that I had a strong connection with. I mean, I knew Colette earlier on, but I mean, back home, like she went to school with my mom, and, you know, the two of them were, I guess, friends as they were growing up. So seeing like how, I guess she was a res kid who came from the res and now she's making it. So I think like that for me was a strong connection because I mean, same here. I'm also from the res and here I am, college and stuff. But in terms of MMIR, I know Colette's done a lot of work. The last time before this, I seen her at the Cozy Decor activist protest here in Omaha in June last year. Yeah, when the pandemic just started going up, and she was one of the people who helped coordinate that event and put it together. And beforehand, I know she was at an event that GPOS put on in January last year as well. So she's done a lot of work. And I know that every time she hears or there's a family struggling with one of their missing relatives, she's one of the first people I know to call into the state and find out what's going on. How can we find this person? And for Colette, I know she's a easygoing and gentle, strong person. So getting to interview her was a big honor for me.
Yeah, and getting to watch it, I was very glad that I was able to watch that, and I learned a lot. And throughout all of our work that we've tried to make efforts in for MMIR and MMIW, I've realized how interconnected all of these issues are. And when we're talking about MMIR or MMIW, we aren't stopping this work at the end of the week when we change topics for our campaign, but we're continuing to do this work because the pipelines affect this, the spirituality, our cultural beliefs in the scheme of like the Americas affects it. So like she said, we have complex systems of gender and sexuality, and like our traditions, and this is all linked. So as we continue with the 100-day holding the Biden-Harris administration accountable, we're still going to try to incorporate these other things that are affecting this movement and this epidemic.
Thank you so much for talking about that, Keely and Alexandria. And you guys made some amazing graphics this week, and these are them right here. What Keely has brought up so far. They've also been doing a lot of work writing, as well as researching. And I'm going to bring up a couple of resources that Keely put together this week, actually. One of them being phone numbers that you can call around the country. You can take a look at those, like I said, on our Facebook page, on Instagram, and also resources online that you can go to find more information about this issue, about this crisis. Actually, I don't even like to call it so much of an issue, but a crisis. There's more too. Trish was just talking about numbers you can call, like in Iowa and Nebraska, and it makes me realize like we need specifically numbers for that here in these two states where this particular crisis has not been discussed so widely and publicly as it has in other states. Keely, being in Iowa and growing up here, like what do you think about this particular crisis? Did you hear about it growing up, or did you just hear more about the violence?
I did hear about it growing up, but I don't think it's widely known by Iowans. I don't think that it's really talked about. And we have resources. So if another place that you could find resources are on tribal nation pages, like websites, and oftentimes they do have resources on there as well. But I would say outside of our tribal communities in Iowa, it's not really talked about on the grand narrative,
No, it's not. How about you, Alexandria?
So for me, coming from Nebraska, it's definitely terrifying. I didn't grow up hearing about this stuff. It wasn't until maybe I was 15, 14, something like that, that I finally ventured out from the Siouxland area. And I don't know, it's just scary to think about it, because I'm here at my dorm at UNO, and it's Omaha's one of them big cities that things do happen, unfortunately.
Unfortunately, Omaha is a pretty racist city as well.
Yeah, so very unlucky in that aspect, but I'm also lucky enough to the point where I've been here for 3 years and nothing has happened to me or anybody I know personally. But It's just scary.
So I'm going to lean on you two a little bit. I'm going to put you in the hot spot a little bit. I'm going to bring Trish on here with us. Here we go. And we're going to have to fill in a little bit of time because one of our guests is unable to make it today. And so, I thought that, the four of us can just be on screen here today and have a conversation, a much more detailed conversation about, the different things like we're going to be doing like long term or like just how we feel like, just personally about this issue. And I think what's important for people to hear is like how this work is an extension of ourselves. When we do this work, it's also very emotional and it's very taxing. And I think that a lot of people that, follow or are trying to learn about this don't quite understand the amount of emotion that goes into it. Trish, I was hoping you could respond to that.
Can you rephrase the question? I'm sorry. I was trying to get a hold of our guest. So.
It's okay. The amount of emotion that goes into this, like, tell me like what that's like for you.
Oh gosh. So we have the family of Zachary Bearhills that will be on later, but I had compiled just a little clip, it's 5 minutes long, and reflecting back on it last night, I was just, and this, I wasn't there from the beginning, so I don't want to, say that, oh, I've been there, and, this has been work of, the late Dr. Frank Lemire. I think there was Rudy Mitchell, Kevin Abrask, some of the Native American activists there that had, helped the family of Bearhills. And it was just interesting to see how, like, last year there was a pandemic, and then we had a lot of social injustices happening. And then, amidst that, we have Zachary Bearhill's walk. And then from there was like the court hearing. It's a lot, or not a court hearing. It was the city council meeting in which the city of Omaha basically had, given a payment to the family. And, it's really just, it's really emotional because you get really connected to the relative that went missing and murdered. And, it's, no amount of money is ever going to, ever bring back somebody or make you feel whole again. So that's kind of what I've taken away. And then for our own personal family, like, we've had our auntie missing since the 80s, and we don't know what happened. That was a time, and she wasn't living out in California. We don't know what happened, as far as, could it have been just maybe she was doing sex work and something happened? Or is it, this was an era of serial killers? You don't know what happened. So, it's really emotional to talk about, but these conversations need to happen because if we don't, it's just going to keep continuing, and we're never going to find the proactive approaches that we need to in order to save our own, relatives from going missing and murdered.
When you were talking about that just now, the sex work, that actually was kind of triggering to me because I right away thought of Cindy Gladue, who was a woman that was killed a few years ago by a truck driver that it's too hard to talk about, but like that had he killed her by force and in the by penetration, and in the courtroom they actually had this organ like in a jar, like preserved as evidence, to use in the trial. And I can't tell you how upsetting that was and how terrible that was. This happened in Alberta, Canada, and how there was such an outcry from women across the country about this particular case because of what this colonial government deigned to do. I mean, first of all, that's not culturally okay for us to do that. And second of all, the family had not been consulted about this and was completely surprised by this evidence that was produced in a courtroom, which I thought was completely inhumane and devaluing of like us as a people, and treating us more like, you know, a species and something to put on display rather than to give us the respect that we deserve. And so this is not just an issue that is perpetrated like on the streets or like in places that are considered dangerous, right? This is an issue perpetrated by the colonial governments of this world, and then if we're here talking about Turtle Island in the U.S. and Canada, because they do not give us the type of like humane treatment that we deserve, and it's an institutionalized issue, and so that's why we're here today talking about this. And in particular, the Violence Against Women Act, and what these colonial governments need to do to clean up their mess. This is their problem. They perpetuated this problem. So, as much as we want to use our sovereignty and like our ways of doing things to solve this problem, this ongoing very, very disturbing crisis, we also need them to be accountable for everything that they have done. And what they have done is unaccountable genocide and horror to our people. So if this is me being emotional, actually, this is how I feel when I do this work. Keely, do you have any feelings about how you would you like to tell us how it is for you?
Yeah, it's very difficult because people from my own community have been affected, families have been affected by this, and it's really troubling to begin studying federal Indian policy and history and see how this is happening at all levels. This disrespect, it's happening in the courtroom, but it's also happening in the data. And the data we have is horrific, but it's also underreported. And that's one of the scariest things as well, is that we have these numbers and we have these people going missing, these relatives going missing. And, a lot of times it's not reported, but what we do have reported is it's a crisis and it's an epidemic beyond what we even know. And so that's why it's just so important that we do this work and that we hold all levels of this process of accountability accountable. We hold the people who are supposed to protect us accountable and to actually do that.
Thank you so much for that. And Alexandria, if you have a quick minute, we'd love to hear closing remarks from you, and then we're going to move on to our talk about man camps.
All right. I guess adding on to all of that, even in my interview yesterday, I just got questions prepared, but hearing what Colette had to say about a lot of the people, or even what Trisha was saying, the things you covered, it's very taxing emotionally. You leave that interview feeling like you need to do more things to bring people to awareness, to the situation. So, it's empowering at the same time, but also it feels like we need to do more. It's not just us that need to do more, but it's everybody else.
It is. Thank you so much, you two. We'll see you next week in our meetings. And one of the issues affecting Indigenous peoples is the incessant attempts of this government and corporate entities to come into our lands and take what isn't theirs. And that's how this whole thing got started in the first place. And I was honored and lucky enough to be at the United Nations Permanent Forum on Indigenous Issues at the 18th session in New York in May 2019, where I wrote an intervention and presented it, at the session. And so I thought today I would read that intervention so we can talk about what man camps are doing within our communities. And man camps are, these spaces that are set up for, transient workers to come in to places and, install pipelines or, do other types of construction or mine or, do whatever it is that's usually related to taking resources out of our territories, often illegally. And so I'm going to read that for you here today. Just give me a second here. I'm just bringing it up. The relentless colonization of our territories on Turtle Island has a direct correlation to an increased rate of violence against Indigenous women, men, Two-Spirit people, and children, in particular women, children, and Two-Spirit folks. We have many names for this crisis, one of which is missing and murdered Indigenous relatives. Today, we take this opportunity to call attention to the effect that temporary workforce housing, also known as man camps for large construction projects, fossil fuel extraction, or mineral mining has on Indigenous communities situated nearby. As James Anaya, former UN Special Rapporteur on the Rights of Indigenous Peoples, has stated, Indigenous women have reported that the influx of workers into Indigenous communities as a result of extractive projects also led to increased incidents of sexual harassment and violence, including rape and assault. In this regard, we highlight the following two examples. First, a study in Canada examining the potential impacts associated with the construction of the Mount Milligan mine in British Columbia of the Nakaslii and the Tlascalan First Nations and the municipality of Fort St. James found that the local community experienced a 48% increase in assaults with a weapon, 50% increase in aggravated assaults, 38% increase in sexual assaults, and 37% increase in missing people reports. On the Fort Berthold Indian Reservation, located in the middle of the Bakken oil fields, there was a 70% increase of federal case filings between 2009 and 2011. According to a new report released in 2017, there is a correlation between an increase of violence and the oil boom. The report states that since the Bakken oil boom, Native American communities have reported increased rates of human trafficking, specifically sex trafficking, and missing and murdered Indigenous women in their communities. In light of the MMIR crisis, we reference Article 22.2, where states shall take measures in conjunction with Indigenous peoples to ensure that Indigenous women and children enjoy the full protection and guarantees against all forms of violence and discrimination. We therefore recommend that Article 22.2 include the term Two-Spirit, as they are also a highly targeted community, that the UN recommend that the United States Violence Against Women Act, VAWA, should add stronger language surrounding judicial sovereignty for tribal nations to prosecute non-tribal perpetrators on their territories, and that the UN support Indigenous advocates in Canada that are demanding the federal government ensure sexual violence associated with worker camps is addressed in the ongoing missing and murdered Indigenous women and girls inquiry. We also continue to push US and Canadian governments to adhere to the United Nations Declaration on the Rights of Indigenous People, where Indigenous peoples have the right to own, use, develop, and control the lands they possess, which also includes in both countries free, prior, and informed consent from tribal nations to carry out major construction and extraction within a certain distance of those territories. In closing, we ask the UN and its member states to adhere to all of UNDRIP, the United Nations Declaration on the Rights of Indigenous Peoples, and end the Indigenous missing and murdered Indigenous relatives crisis on Turtle Island. So that was what I presented at the UN in 2019 and submitted. And the UN is a place where, Indigenous peoples have a chance to stand up and talk about issues that are important to them. That was important to me. It is important to me. Of course, violence is not only perpetrated through man camps in our territories, but it's definitely an issue that we have to take on because it's very much connected to the extraction in our territories. Trish.
Yes, thank you very much. I've always liked when you read that. I know the UN wasn't the only place that you did it. We also presented to that in front of the Lincoln State Capitol, which we have. If you follow us on YouTube, there's a whole no KXL, everything that ties into that. So our next guest is Jessica, who is my sister. She's going to join me here and talk about our Auntie Polly. My mom, she's very, she gets very emotional, so she didn't want to come on today. As it is, it's very emotional to talk about these things, especially when it's your own relatives, your own personal, you have the face-to-face conversations and interactions. So we just want to keep my mom and our prayers. And also too, Stacy wasn't able to join. She fell ill, and we're still trying to track down Teely. So hopefully we can get that going too as well. So here is my sister, Jessica Lopez Walker. Hi.
Hey, sister.
Hi. Thank you for joining me today. I wanted to basically just kind of talk about, obviously Auntie Polly and the stories that you've heard about her, and then, just kind of like the personal, what was she like? And then if you can touch on how you came about to to look for her, and then what the process was as far as like, how did that all, what was the process? Like, what made you want to go looking for her? And then who are the people that you encountered, and some of the challenges that you faces, and also the uplifting things that you've encountered?
Okay. Well, to start off, I know my mom and my Auntie Polly, our Auntie Polly, they were closest together, grew up together. I remember her being around. I don't remember like a whole lot about her. I know that she was like really loving and, a carefree spirit. And I do know that the man that she was with, her boyfriend at that time, was very abusive towards her, physically abusive, probably other ways too, I'm sure, but that was very evident of the abuse that she suffered from him. And she went out to California with him in the early 80s, and I think it was probably 84 contact, and family hadn't heard from her since that last contact. And I think it was a postcard that she had sent to our Choka grandpa. And for whatever reasons, I'm not too sure, she's just been missing from our family. And when one of our other uncles passed away a couple of years ago, I personally thought it was really sad that he passed away and he was alone, and nobody really knew, what type of, things to do for him, in his end days. So I helped, as much as I could with that. And he is buried next to our grandfather now. But in thinking on, how he was alone, and, the disruption between, our aunties and uncles, as they were growing up, I thought about my Auntie Polly. And, I kind of always did, just because I saw how it affected mom, and, how, sad she would get at times, just watching that over the years. And back then I was younger. I didn't really know how to go about, looking for somebody or anything like that, or what the first steps would even be. So after our uncle's funeral, I went on Facebook and was looking through all these missing people's groups posting about her. And I found a lady named Shannon Blankenship, and within a day, this lady helped me locate Auntie. And without her, I don't think I would have been able to do it. And she was on it. Like, we were up like for that whole 24 hours, just messaging back and forth. And once we found her, we had to establish that that was her. We had to have two aunties do DNA kits, and it was a match. So then after that, we had to locate her husband, which was the boyfriend, and she had actually married him. And that was one of the reasons why it was so hard to look for her, because we didn't know that she was married. But when somebody isn't claimed or yeah, claimed, the public administration of that county or city takes over. And so I had to contact that person, and that person had to therefore try to get a hold of her husband, Raymond. And she wasn't able to. She never got a reply back from any of the addresses or phone numbers given. Even tried to reach out to a family member, and she didn't get anywhere. So within that time frame, when it was done, she allowed one of my aunts to become the next of kin. And so all the paperwork that we have to file with the cemetery and the mortuary, because they have to contract together for the disinterment and cremation, and to have her shipped here. So my Auntie Karen is the one who's listed as next of kin, and she's currently waiting for the paperwork to get to her in Canada. And as soon as that paperwork gets back to California, where I did find my aunt, then they'll start the process of exhuming her and having her brought back home. So I think one of the biggest challenges that I faced in looking for her was getting the runaround a lot from different like police agencies and people that you were supposed to turn to file missing persons reports, because that was missing. What ended up having to happen is the homicide detective that I got a hold of, he ended up having to file the missing persons report for us so that it would get done. And he was even like really upset that I had to go through so many people to even try to get that taken care of. He's like, it shouldn't have to be that hard for anybody. And I agree. You know, a lot of people are like, well, why after so long are you just now? And I'm like, that's not really the issue. You know, I'm trying to go by the book here and do what I'm supposed to do. So are you going to help me or not? You know, and yeah, I just encountered a lot of that. And then another thing that was really hard was going through NamUs, and that's the database for missing people, and just reading about different you know, other cases, you know, where people are, you know, Jane Doe's, and how they're found, and you know, how they have like body parts missing and stuff like that. That's just like really emotionally hard, you know, because you don't want to think of your family member like that, but then you think, well, these things are similar, you know, and you know, could this be my family member? And just to see, you know, so many people that end up that way, it's really, really sad. And I hope all those people do find, you know, their families and where they belong. But yeah, the detective, it's Detective Lester Harvey, and he was super, super helpful along the way. Him and the coroner over at in Riverside County, and like I said, that Shannon Blankenship. Those are three people that were very, very helpful, and to this day, I do the detective and Shannon. You know, we keep up, you know, on everything, even though my aunt's case is old. Technically, it's a cold case, but because family has, you know, inquired into her again, it's open. So, you know, it's not closed or anything like that. Certain details aren't being told about exactly what happened to her, just because it's still an open case. So all we know right now is that she was strangled and passed away that way. She was with her husband at a motel. Other witnesses were there. They seen her get into a semi with a trucker, and that was the last anybody's seen of her. There is, I have the location of where they found her, and it's it was way out, kind of in the boonies, and the only reason she was found was because there was an accident right near where she was, located. The state trooper was looking around. I think he had to do measurements or something, and he happened to see her, and that's how she was found. She wasn't there very long. Her body was still in a good state, they said. And she was buried over there in Riverside County. And I heard that when people aren't claimed, sometimes they're buried on top of each other, and they don't know if that's the case or not, because she was buried so long ago. But they won't know that until they start the exhuming of her. So that's just kind of been on my mind too. I mean, even though the person, is just their body in the ground, you still want the best for your relative, no matter which way they're, buried and gone. But yeah, those were some of the things that I encountered with it. And I did it, for my family, so that even though we're, the aunties and, even some of us cousins are, distant, I still want us to, have a bond. I still want us to come together, and I want to provide some type of healing, for my aunties. And, I know that they think that my auntie Polly, she's in a good place now, but, I still want her to be brought home. And that was my ultimate goal, was to have her laid to rest next to our grandfather. And that's the plan, and it's all in motion right now. So, I'm really, really happy that, that process is almost done. And when she's brought back, to my understanding, she's going to be, as soon as she's back, she's going to be put into the ground immediately. And then due to COVID, whenever the family decides, we'll have a ceremony for her for that. So
Thank you so much for sharing all this. Because yeah, it's I think thank God for social media nowadays, because I feel like it would have been just a lot more challenging. Is there any fundraisers, anything that you want to plug in real quick? We have to. We're going to talk to Adrian next, who is a relative of Zachary Bear Hills.
yeah, we do have a GoFundMe. Any money that we raise for that GoFundMe is going to go towards the ceremony and other things that we're going to be needing for that and relatives, and for the people that have helped us along the way. So I think it's just listed under Paulette Walker, GoFundMe fundraiser for Paulette Walker. So if anybody wants to help and donate, we'd really appreciate it. So thank you for having me on.
All right. Thank you, sister. Have a good day. All right. So our next guest are the family of Zachary Bear Hills, and I don't see Renita yet, but we will bring these two on, and then hopefully Renita can get on too as well. So I'm introducing Adrian and Mitchell. Hi, guys. Hello. Can you hear me?
How are you doing?
Okay, good. Thank you so much for making time out of your day to join us. If you would like, whoever would like to start, just kind of introduce yourself and how you're related to the Zachary Bear Hills, and then anything you want to share after that.
Go ahead, Mitchell.
I'm having problems with my camera. Hang on.
Oh, okay. I'll hop in.
Go ahead, sis.
Okay. So I'm Adrian Chalapaw, and I am the first cousin of Zachary Bear Hills. This right here is my other brother, Mitchell, who's Zach's brother. And So I'm originally from Oklahoma. I'm live streaming from Albuquerque, but yeah, I'm glad to be here. Thanks for inviting us.
Thank you for making time. I know that it was very short notice. I talked to Renita last night, and she was scrambling around. So what I would like for you was to kind of share the story as much as you're comfortable about what happened to Zachary in Omaha, Nebraska, and then kind of what has been challenging in the whole process, and what has been uplifting too as well. What's encouraging.
Yeah, sure. From my perspective, of course, I've only gathered what happened from news articles, from the court cases involved, and from talks with the lawyers and of course with family. So gathering all that information together, what I understand happened is that Zach was on his way home to Oklahoma, and he was on the bus, and for some reason the bus left him in Omaha, and I don't know what happened, but the bus left him in Omaha, and he doesn't know anyone there. He was stranded, and also didn't have his medication on him and wasn't taking it, so was in the middle of a health crisis. And then from there, he really didn't get much help. I know that there was an officer who helped him earlier in the day, gave him some water, and I think that officer, I was thankful for treating him like a human being. But later on, there were 4 Buckies that the employees called the cops on him because he was just hanging out outside, and so they called the cops, and then we all know what happened from there as far as the police being just really inhumane and aggressive, and they treated him very violently. And there's more, and I know my relatives can tell you from their perspective. Like my auntie, spoke with the officers that night, and it's really traumatizing to tell the story. So I apologize if I leave out the major details, but basically they beat and tasered him to death in the middle of a health crisis. So you said challenges, right? And then things that were uplifting.
Yeah, things that were uplifting. And hi, Renita. Renita joined us, so I don't know if can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you.
Okay. Oh, good. We can hear you. And it looks like Mitchell, we lost connection, so we'll add him back to the stream here. And so hopefully you all can kind of.
There he is.
Yeah.
There he is.
But yes, Renita, maybe this is a question for you. What has been uplifting? What has been the encouragement, the good things that you have seen that came from this tragedy?
A lot of the community of Omaha has been very supportive for our family with Zachary, and I was just amazed about how much the community has come together with us with our loss with Zachary, and that's very uplifting, and that's very supportive. That it's not only about the native, there's different nationalities has come together. The loss of Zachary, and that's very uplifting. And that there's other groups has reaching out to us, like the police brutalities of mothers, missing and murder Indigenous women and men, and Native Lives Matter, Family of Angel. I mean, there's other groups that I know that's been very supportive, that contact me to, support us with Zach. So that's very encouraging to us And there's others that I might not, can think of right hand, but that's very supportive to us.
Yes, I'm sure there's an outpour. I mean, I just don't see why anybody wouldn't, support the cause. But there's, we're in a time and age where that's, this is all clashing together. So,
Yeah.
Mitchell, I don't know if you can hear me, Mitchell. I don't know if can you hear me? Maybe I was going to ask Mitchell, kind of, what was his relationship with Zachary, and his personal, like, what was he like? What was Zachary like? Maybe this is a question for everyone. So, what was Zachary like? What made Zachary Zachary?
Oh, we must have lost Mitchell.
Yeah.
I'm just going to pop in here too to tell people not to forget to unmute their mic.
Okay. So
You're good.
So I love this question actually. What was Mitchell like? I'm sorry, what was Zach like? It's fun to think about the memories, I think, for me as a sister, because we grew up very close, and he was a lot of fun. Just, I was just telling my husband, one of my favorite memories is during Thanksgiving, after everybody would leave and all the family would go, our family would leave our food out at our kitchen. We have like a family community kitchen, and it's up on a hill, and we would, leave the food there overnight because it was cold in that kitchen. And me and Zach would go raid the food, like in the middle of the night. If there was any pie left, we would take the pie. We would just he was a lot of fun to just play games with and watch TV, tell stories, and eat, and just have, childhood type stuff. We ran the creeks and we went swimming, and he loved basketball too. And he loved to write, and he was really creative and a really deep thinker. And I think that's why we got along so well. It's just, it was never a dull moment, I think, when he was around. So I love reminiscing on those memories.
Renita, what are some of your memories of Zachary?
Oh gosh. Yeah. Well, he was the big brother to his brothers and taught them a lot. And they have a lot of memories together growing up, like with their sports, music, being out here, like Adrian said, at their grandma's. They all get together, play out here, play basketball, mainly basketball, and the music. And like she said, he loved to write like poems, and he liked to sing and dance. So whenever they made them the articles in the Omaha, like making fun of my son, he always danced. It didn't matter where he was at, he would just dance out in the open public, anywhere. That was just Zachary. If you heard music he liked, that was him. And he was very, how would you say, respectful to his elders. He loved his grandparents, weighed on them hand and foot, and he was just he loved to laugh, enjoy family functions. I mean, I can't think of everything right now. And yeah, the culture too. He loved the culture. Mitchell,
Yeah.
are you there? Mitchell, can you hear?
Yes, yeah. Yeah, so Mitchell, my question was to you, what was Zachary like with you? I mean, like, what was your relationship like? What are some memories? Just kind of the personal, who was Zachary?
Oh, my brother was just always happy, no matter who he was around. If he hasn't seen any type of family or friends in a while, he would greet you with a hug, no matter what. He was always happy to see everybody. And when we had our family gatherings, he was the first one to go see all the elders, shake their hands, give them hugs. He was just a happy person, and he loved basketball. He loved to write. he just loved being around me and my brothers anytime he had a chance, because over the years as we grew up, we kind of started drifting away, splitting up here and there, but it was always a joy for him. I remember when I was gone for a while and I returned from Colorado when Adrian and her husband Waylon brought me back. I woke Zach up in the middle of the night at my grandma Libby's house, and he just jumped up, just laughing and smiling, gave me the biggest hug ever. And that's one of the moments I won't ever forget. I mean, it just shows what kind of person he was. He was just always happy to see anybody. And I'm just
Right on.
still in shock with everything that happened. I mean, I know it's been a couple of years, but I mean, it just feels like it just happened this year to me still. I mean,
Yes.
I'm in awe about everything that happened. I mean, I already spoke about a lot of stuff when we was in Omaha. I already let a lot of anger out to certain people, but this whole thing with my brother, it should have never happened. I've seen similar cases with other people, but I just strongly believe, no one should go through this. Mothers, brothers, sisters, or anybody, because it's something you can't cope with right away. It takes years. I mean, I still believe I can pick up the phone and talk to my brother. I mean, I remember my last phone call to Zachary. I was living in Phoenix in a shelter, and he called me when I was walking to Family Dollar with my family. He was telling me about his new apartment he got. He was living right next to the casino in Lawton, and he just kept asking me when I was going to come home, and I was telling him that I have a family now. I was like, but they're ready to meet you. You have your Seigis, your nephews and nieces that want to meet you, and I'll come home soon. And then 2 months later, my brother was gone, and that's what really got me the worst, because I remember the last phone call. We talked for about 12 minutes and 37 seconds, and that was my last moment of my brothers. And my other two brothers, they're taking it harder than me and my mom is, and I'm not gonna say they're not as strong to speak their mind, but they're still hurt, and they're dealing with all this a different way up to this day. I've been there with Zach since he was diagnosed with his problems, and I remember the day I seen him at school, he didn't look like himself. That's when they took him to Teleferro online, and everything changed after that. I had to help him get back to who he was. I was the second to youngest, trying to cope with everything, but I stood by my mom to do whatever I could to help Zachary out, and eventually he could get back to himself. He couldn't even walk into the store and buy nothing at one time, but after a while, he was out playing ball with strangers, talking to strangers on the, on the buses and stuff, just saying hi. It's just, he came a long way to get where he was for it to end like that, and that's what really hurts me the most. It really does. I really miss my older brother like crazy.
Oh, I can't even imagine. My condolences still, and we are going to be here to support you in any way that we can. So please don't hesitate to reach out to us. Is there any donations, anything before we close out? I do have a video that I did put together, so I wanted to share that real quick. But I didn't know if you guys had any donation links. I know we have the t-shirts, which I obviously bought one. I don't know if you guys are still doing this at all.
So right now we don't have any any donations. We got to a point of, at first it was just getting his story out there because we knew it was wrong. We knew that it was bigger than our family. I think at first it's easy to just kind of hide under a rock because it's difficult. But after a while, we realized if we don't speak out against this, if we don't put our foot down, then it's going to keep happening to more relatives. And the devastation that it did to our family, like right here, this is our grandma, and he was really close with our grandma, and just watching her deal with that grief too, it's heartbreaking because you can't return someone that you love, and especially in this way. I encourage those who don't know about Zach's case to take it easy. If you go watch the video, please practice self-care because it will stay with you. And but you know, we that was our plan in the beginning, was just like get the word out, put our foot down, tell everybody that this was wrong and it needs to stop. And unfortunately, legally, the cops were not held accountable. And so they're still out there patrolling the streets, except for one, you know, but there was 4 total officers. And I always like to say their names because I feel like there should be some sort of like violent cop offender database or something, and so that they get to live their lives while our lives were destroyed. So, you know, it's Michaela Mead, Jennifer Strudel, Sergeant Eric Forehead. I hold him accountable because of his actions and his words that night. He played a big role, and he's still employed with the Omaha Police Department. And we also have Scotty Payne, and we have oh gosh, I'm missing his name, you guys.
Ryan McClarty.
Thank you, Ryan McClarty. I always say their names, and it's not to give them any type of platform or spotlight, but it's because I want to hold them accountable. Those are our aggressors. We're the victims. They're the abusers, and they need to be held accountable. So, and you know, they got back pay, they got their pensions, their benefits, their lives are cozy, and there's no amount of money in the world that would give us Zach back. And so that's one thing that I like to add, is that even though our family settled with the city, it was such a slap in the face, not because of the money or anything. I did the research and I saw how much people were paid in wrongful deaths, and I saw that they thought that our brother and our relative was worth nothing. So it was a slap in the face, but at the same time, you know, I think what needs to happen now is those officers need to be held accountable because they still have their jobs, and we can't do anything criminally, but I think as a society, we can we can't let them forget. You know, I've never had the opportunity to see them in the face and to see them, and even with the mayor, she didn't meet with us when we went up there. There's a lot of things that kind of were left unreconciled, and as a family, it's just, what can we do to help support those who are in those positions? Like, you know, you can always email or message our Justice for Zachary Bear Hills page if you have an event or anything happening, and we'll be happy to share it. We don't have the biggest platform, but we're happy to share or try to get the word out for other relatives, because it's going to keep happening, and it is. And my prayers are with those who have been through something similar.
Thank you so much for taking the time out here today, and we'll be in contact very soon, okay? Thank you all very much, and I'm going to go ahead and play the video. Jess, if you could do that for me.
Remember me, remember me, remember me. When the sun comes up in the morning sky, there I will be, there I will be. Soaring with the eagle so high, feeling free. Remember me, down the road, hand in hand, you and me.
Yapi, how? My name is Kevin Abrask. My Lakota name is Chanku Cheska, which means Holy Road. You know, Zachary, he suffered from bipolar depression and schizophrenia. He hadn't taken his medications that day. He began acting erratically, and the driver on that bus decided to kick him off here in Omaha. And it's at this point, I would say, that one of the most egregious things that happened to Zachary that day occurred. As he was sitting on his behind with his back up against the tire of that cruiser and his hands cuffed behind his back. Officer Payne decided to walk up to him with his taser and shock him. Zachary was no threat at that point. No threat. Yet this officer decided to walk up to him for no reason and point his stun gun at him and shock him over and over and over and over and over and over again until he had shocked Zachary 6 times, sitting on the ground like that, no threat to anybody. And so one of the other officers on the scene, Ryan McClarty, decided to grab him by the hair and began punching him in the face. Now I want to talk about this next part because it's something that the city doesn't want you to know. It was something that was completely downplayed in the courtroom. It was something that was downplayed by the police. But when those new officers arrived, not those 4 that were there, but when the next wave of officers came, they took turns sitting on Zachary's back. There was a 275-pound, 6'1" officer who testified in court that when he arrived at the scene, there was another officer on Zachary's back putting his full weight on Zachary. And he said, that officer looked tired, so I walked up and I took his place and I put my full weight on Zachary. It calmed down. You know, it's this concept, this idea that officers need to detain us, need to incapacitate us to such an extent that we are no longer moving. Don't they know that if we're not moving, we're probably dead?
And the state of Nebraska has broken down. Who can disagree with me? The most vulnerable man in all of Nebraska on a June 2017 night at 60th and Center was tasered and beaten to death by the Omaha Police Department, but no one could find any wrongdoing. Zachary Bearhills was murdered under the color of law. We have offered up our prayers and we have put down tobacco. Our prayers for justice and for Zachary Bearhills to be able to rest have been heard, and we will find that justice when all of us have taken heart and when we tell Omaha and all of the country that we have had enough. It is foretold that we will gain justice only when we stand up and continue the fight that the city of Omaha and their police department started. I am ready to fight. What choice do we have? They are killing our sons and daughters. We must act. We must call on the U.S. Attorney and the DOJ to see what is wrong and what has been wrong in the ranks of the Omaha Police Department. We must call on our congressional delegations and tribal nations to step up. Where are the warriors and those who pump their fists in the air at rallies? There is no need to perceive who the enemies may be and what they may think. They find it okay to take the most vulnerable among us and beat us to death, to electrocute us. The Omaha Police Department has been allowed by the courts and the justice system to be the judge, jury, and executioner of Zachary Bearhills. Investigate the whole damn bunch. They are the poster boys for collusion. And I share these words too. These are the words of the late Dr. Frank Lemire.
So yes, that was, like I said, we were talking about earlier about how, you know, this when we talk about MMIR, sorry, I'm just really getting emotional because, you know, I've gone to the walk, I've gone to the city council meeting, and it's just, you know, they talk about Zachary, you know, in the city council, like it's just another day in the park, you know, and this is not how it should be. So I just wanted to kind of relay that. We do have our next guest on. I believe it's Olivia Walker. So Christine, I will let you introduce her and I'll get off the screen.
I've known Olivia for years, and it's an honor to have her here today because she's been doing work in her community in Iowa for a very long time. And she's here today to speak about Rita Papaki and the what has happened in the Meskwaki community here in Iowa. And thank you so much for being here today, Olivia. It means a lot to us because I know it's difficult to speak about these things, but I'm also like really glad you're here because you're really good at talking about it and getting to the heart of the issue.
Thank you for having me today. I really appreciate the time to talk about my relative Rita. So yeah, thank you. I guess I'll just start by just kind of talking a little bit about myself. My name's Olivia. I'm a member of the Meskwaki Nation. Born and raised Iowan. Actually went to middle school and high school in Sioux City. And so it's kind of funny when I think about when I was first kind of exposed to activism in the Native community across Iowa and Nebraska. And I was able to attend the March for Lost Children in Sioux City. I think like since its inception back in the 90s. So I'm really glad that I kind of had those foundational pieces. It's always been really important to me to be active in whatever community I've been in. Recently moved back to Iowa in 2018 after spending time in Minneapolis, Minnesota, and also Portland, Oregon. So it's great to be back in Iowa and kind of get re-engaged in efforts here to really support, I think, not only the MMIR and MMIW movements, because it's really important, even if we haven't been personally impacted by it. I think it's really important that we help elevate the narratives about what's been happening in our community and other communities for a long time. I know some of the efforts to really raise awareness started in Canada and kind of made their way down to the States. And so I'm thankful for those that, had the opportunity to really bring this to the forefront and then also start working on the structural and systemic elements that impact the way that our communities are perceived, and also in ways that have, I think, criminalized our communities, devalued our men and women and children. And I really think it's important to talk about that in any story about our missing relatives. My cousin, Rita Papaki, she's also a member of the Meskwaki Nation. She ended up going missing in January of 2015. So it's now been over 6 years since she's been gone. I can say a lot about Rita. I think it's good to talk about both what she was really good at and also those things that she struggled with. She was a good mom. She has 4 children. She now has 2 grandchildren that she hasn't had the opportunity to meet, which has been devastating for our family. She definitely had some struggles. And again, it's like you think about, the way that we grow up, the way that we were perceived, the way that we were raised. You think about, both the interpersonal trauma that's been experienced in our community, as well as that has been brought about by pretty much racist and corrupt governments and systems. So I always think about, when I'm doing this work, and I've had the blessing and the pleasure to work for city and county government. I've worked for our tribal government. And I've also volunteered in a lot of ways to elevate health equity narratives. And so, especially when you're doing work around missing and murdered people, you need to think about not only the context of, who they were as a person, but what were the overlaying systems that either supported or didn't support their wellness. And so for Rita, I said she did have some struggles, especially I'd say in the last year that she was present with us. There was a bit of a lapse from when she went missing to when it was reported to police. And that was just a part of her MO, like she always checked in with family, if it had been, a couple days or a couple weeks. She kept in good contact with her parents and her siblings. For me, it was kind of a strange situation, right? I was living up in Minneapolis. I had started my own family. I was blessed enough to be able to be supported through the education system and land a good job. And I was pregnant with my daughter when Rita went missing, living up in Minneapolis 4 hours away. And so it's just one of those things where you think on a personal level, like, what could I have done differently? Is there anything I could have done differently? And I think in this case, it's really hard when there's a lapse in the time, because then, there's not really a narrative to piece together for the police. And then, you also think about how, like, a lot of systems really aren't set up to support the families who have a person who's gone missing. And so, you know, after she was reported missing, there's been numerous searches. I'd have to say that the hardest part of this all has been, you know, really figuring out how to support our family in this. You know, her children were younger. You know, her daughter has 2 children of her own. The kids are in high school now. And so even thinking about how, like, as young children, they were impacted by the loss of their mom. You know, to date, there's been no significant updates to the case. We're kind of in a place where we know, or we've heard who may have been involved, because along with people that go missing, you know, there's all the stories that swirl around, you know, who were they involved with? Who are they hanging out with? You know, there's, you know, there's stories that have been circulating around the community about what potentially happened to her, and then the harm that's come from those rumors, some really like disturbing things that we've heard that could have potentially happened to her. And so there have been some pretty decent efforts by our tribal government to help support, you know, trying to break the case open. There is a large amount of money that's been set aside by the tribe. I think it's up to $75,000 now for anybody who can break open the case. But I think in this particular instance, it's there are people who know what happened to her. There are people who could bring our family closure. There are people who could, you know, just let us know what happened. Our family's kind of in a place where we don't necessarily know that we'll ever get justice in this situation. But, you know, even if we could do the things that we need to do culturally, to be able to have some closure is going to be really important for us at some point. We haven't been able to conduct any of those things. And, you know, I kind of struggle myself in terms of being, you know, my family jokes about me being the spokesperson of the family, but I will always take the opportunity to talk about Rita when it's been presented. I always check in with my Aunt Iris to make sure that she's comfortable. And, you know, that's the thing she always says is like, please talk. We need to get her story out there. You know, we never know who this might get to. We never know who, you know, who could end up doing something about it. And so that's something that I try and carry, because I think about how re-traumatizing it can be to talk about the fact that she's gone and the impacts that it's had not only on people in our family, but also our community at large. Now, I say I don't know if we'll ever have closure, and I really believe that to be true, because there have been a lot of people who have had opportunities to come forward to let us know what may have happened. And I just don't know. You know, it's something that we have to live with every day. The only thing I can really do is try and advocate to get her story out there, and then also look at, you know, internal to our community, what are things that help support this happening in our community, because, you know, we need to look at the, you know, white supremacy. We need to look at colonized patriarchy and how it's negatively impacted our community. And then we need to say, how are we never going to let this happen again to anybody else? And my children jump in when I'm busy, but, you know, the thing
perfect timing. That's why we do this work, right?
It's why we do this work. Yeah, you can wait 5 more minutes, okay? Wait 5 more minutes. But I think about the fact that we're able to have these conversations in front of our children, and they kind of have a different narrative now than we ever had growing up. You know, they have, you know, engaging in marches and other things. I need you to give me 5 minutes and I'll be out. Yeah.
And speaking of marches, I wanted to say that Olivia helped, or I don't know, March, May 5th, 2019, where we all gathered at the Capitol building to speak on Missing and Murdered Indigenous Women's Day. Yeah,
we've been really fortunate to have Meskwaki Family Services advocate for us in terms of bringing awareness to this. I actually want to shout out to Jared Jefferson, who's a member of the community, a former member of Meskwaki Family Services, who helped coordinate with the Iowa Coalition Against Domestic Violence to help raise awareness on, it was May 5th, 2019. And so that was a really powerful event. I try not to do too much coordination just because I have a lot of other things going on, but any chance there is to raise awareness, I want to show up and help.
Yeah, and Dara has been doing amazing work here in Iowa, and she couldn't be here today. She's traveling, but I'm so glad that we have representation from the Meskwaki community. It's very important. Is there anything else you'd like to add before we move on to the next guest?
I think that's all for now. I just want to thank you again for your time. I think the most important thing I want to say is, how do we prevent this from happening to any other family again? And there's things that we can do, as individuals. There's things that we can do interpersonally in our community to support our women, and to stop and prevent things from happening. And then there's also advocacy that we can do at the tribal level, at the state level, and the federal level. So I encourage people to get involved.
We need to get a bill written, don't we?
I think so. Yep.
Thank you so much, Olivia. I really appreciate you being here today. Hey, Trish.
It's me. So I just I spoke with the family of Lenise Blackbird, and they would like to. We were going to have them come on now, but they would like the extra 10 minutes. So what we'll do is we'll do the Rosalie Fish video. She did an interview with Vice, and Sakawis, do you know a little bit more about Rosalie Fish? I don't know her personally, or I know that she's
an amazing athlete that is Nez Perce in Delaware, I believe. That's been taking advocacy, into what I call settler descendant media and culture, which is really important because, Indigenous peoples in their lifetime, 90% of them will be assaulted by a non-tribal member. So it's really important that we remember that, yes, we do have issues of domestic violence. Yes, we do have high rates of suicide, all these other things happening within our communities, but also to white supremacist culture, we are still not considered fully human and still considered targets for their violence and their rage. And so I really like that Rosalie has been getting this message out into settler descendant culture and society. She works with Nike. She's a runner, and she's really powerful. And she's been working with another amazing youth runner, Jordan Marie Daniels, to get this message out. So let's start Rosalie's video, and we'll go from there.
A lot of Indigenous people are born into political lives, not at our own choosing. For me to say, I don't want Indigenous women to be ignored anymore, is by some people a political statement. Advocating for missing and murdered Indigenous women, they will say that's political. And to me, that's survival. I have 3 Indigenous women in my family. As long as this epidemic is continuous, that means that each of those 3 relatives have targets on their back. My name is Rosalie Fish, and I am from the Muckleshoot and Cowlitz tribes. I am fighting for the rights of all Indigenous women. Anybody who doesn't understand about the missing and murdered Indigenous women epidemic, it's really encompassing the idea that Indigenous women are extremely vulnerable to violence. I think one thing that makes the Indigenous women crisis so deadly, so serious and extreme is that it's neglected. This is a crisis that is long overdue to be addressed. I am an athlete now because I can use it to amplify the voices of people who have been silenced. So when I decided to dedicate races at my state championship meet to a missing or murdered Indigenous woman in my community, I specifically chose women who their disappearances affected me very heavily at that time. I think a lot of families really just wanted justice at some point, and even if that justice meant just know her name, just know who she is, and know what was taken from me. My Aunt Alice, she was an amazing cook. A lot of people don't talk about these traits when they talk about a woman who is part of this epidemic. They talk, well, what happened to her? How did she go? They don't talk about the little things that made that person who they were. And so, yeah, my Aunt Alice was an amazing cook. Iowa was definitely a culture shock, and sometimes it can be very isolating here. But then I would remember, I am pursuing a higher education so I can be an advocate. I'm working toward something. I want to continue to these bigger platforms, and I want to get faster so that I can get to these bigger meets and have even bigger audiences to reach through MMIW.
My name is Jordan Marie Brings through at Horses Daniel. I'm a citizen of the Lower Brule Sioux Tribe, Koichash Oyate, in central South Dakota. I've been running for 22 years. Things started to change when I started running and dedicating my races for missing or murdered Indigenous relatives. I wanted to make sure that they were being thought of, that they weren't forgotten, that someone is looking for them and thinking about them and praying for them. I think now it's just come to a point where enough is enough, and so many Indigenous women and Indigenous relatives are, taking that leadership and next step to be a voice and to organize and to act. I think Rosalie is just leading the way in terms of what we can do, what we are capable of doing. Yeah, this new journey has connected Rosalie and I into like a little family unit that gets it, because we're not only connected by running, but we're connected by, who we run for now.
I'm really excited because I'm about to go meet Jordan Marie Daniels in person for the first time. Jordan and I virtually met in May, where I saw the photo of her with the red handprint, and it really inspired me and changed my perspective. She's really been like a mentor and even like a big sister to me.
Oh, it's so nice to meet you. Yeah. Watching, Indigenous women rise up and being on the front lines of almost every single movement that we see, it's inspiring. And it always reminds me of my favorite quote of, "A nation isn't defeated until the hearts of its women are on the ground." Mm-hmm. And I know for Indigenous women, that will never happen. Finally being heard and given a platform to be taken seriously.
I think that's something that's very unique too about Indigenous advocates, is a lot of us didn't really ask for that platform or that position, right? When I was an 18-year-old still in high school, I know I definitely was extremely unprepared, and I have all of these people hammering me for knowledge, for interviews, and like tokenism and exploitation, right? They want me to be that token, that savage. They wanted that image so bad.
The handprint was not just a symbol. It meant not only the movement, not only the families, it represented the historical violence that Indigenous people continuously face. But we also need to be careful with how we're raising awareness of this, because I feel like I've also seen some people exploit the handprint for likes and follows.
This is like stuff from home. So this is a rock with a design on it that my grandpa gave me. The rock is the symbol of the buffalo, and our teachings about the buffalo is that they head to their storms straight on. And he told me that I might have quite a few storms ahead of me. And he also gave me bear root, because bear root is the herb of strength. So I keep those on my desk just to remind me of home. These are my track spikes. So I have a little bit of ribbon on them, especially for when I ran for Selena Not Afraid. I ran with her in my mind because it was right around when she passed. And she was just very, her story was very heavy, and I couldn't get her really out of my head, so I decided to put some red ribbon on there and just accept that she was who I was running for that day, even when I wasn't really planning to.
Running has changed for me now. I'm sharing a platform to help raise awareness about this epidemic. I want people to start taking us seriously, and I don't want us to feel like our lives are expendable. Running was my outlet to be me and be free, and to hopefully inspire other Indigenous athletes. But my mind is just filled with these stories and this injustice and what's happening to our relatives all over the world. And it just was motivation still to keep running and to keep doing it.
I think no matter where I go, all of the work I do is for this epidemic. Every time I might feel like I get very discouraged, I remember that there are generations of my ancestors that have fought for me to be here.
Going 65 on a 30.
I think there's a lot of things that anybody can do to address MMIW and to be an ally. If you're able to vote for politicians who support the Violence Against Women Reauthorization Act of 2019, and sharing the missing posters, especially if you have social media. I think if somebody asked me what I was running from, a few years ago I would have told them a mixed feelings of anxiety or sometimes even depression or sometimes my family situation. Now I'm running toward something. Now that I've run for my people, there's no way that I could ever run for anything else. I'm taking power back, breaking stereotypes, using my platform, dedicate it to somebody else.
Look for a new way to go.
So that short film, or a short mini doc, was provided by Rosalie Fish for us to view here today. And I wanted to apologize because I think I said it was a Nike initiative, but it's a Levi initiative. And Rosalie has been going to school here in Iowa. And so we've been really lucky to have some of her advocacy, how would you say, like, move over into, this local space. Next, I would like to introduce Nisha Sheridan, who is here today to talk about Lanice Blackbird, her relative Lanice Blackbird. And I'm going to hand it off to Trish to have that interview.
Yeah, so I'm not sure if they're all ready quite yet. Hopefully, maybe we could reach out real quick. That's okay. That's all right. I can talk about MMIR and COVID here, because I think this is what really ties into it. So it came as a no surprise, or it came to us to a surprise when the world literally stopped in the year 2020. COVID-19 began to enter the nation as we began to learn about the new coronavirus. Native American communities all over Turtle Island became worried because of our already existing health disparities that plague our First Nations. So diabetes, heart disease, and cancer, those are all factors. Plus we have the mental health disparities such as depression, suicide, and anxiety, things of that sort. So when the pandemic hit, Natives were and still are being exposed to those greater health risks. Then we layer on the societal challenges such as poverty, substance abuse, and homelessness. Many Natives were left without a job or reliable income source. With the lack of leadership, many natives were left to fend for themselves on and off the reservation. As the coronavirus deaths climbed, so did the rates of intimate partner violence and child abuse. Those rates also went up. Time quoted Sussman, while 1 in 3 white women report having experienced domestic violence during the pandemic, the rates of abuse increased dramatically to about 50% and higher for those marginalized by race, ethnicity, sexual orientation, gender identity, citizenship status, and cognitive physical ability. One of the first steps, as a predator does to their victim, is to isolate them, keep them away from family, friends, and anyone in general. At the beginning of the pandemic, some perpetrators may have been told to stay at home or work from home. Substance abuse may occur in the household. Victims are then subjected to domestic violence and child abuse. Victims feel like they have nowhere to run. Perpetrators are then given more chances to use the pandemic against their victims and telling that they really can't go anywhere. So the pandemic is more or less the perfect storm. So I don't see Nisha, but Christine, I would like if you could talk about VAWA, and then I will see if I can connect with Nisha, and then we'll go from there. So
Absolutely. So one of the reasons why we are working on this issue this week is we have set up a 100 days in office campaign, and this week we were focusing on missing and murdered Indigenous relatives, and in particular the Violence Against Women Act. You know, for the first time since 1994, the Violence Against Women Act expired under Trump's regime. And, Trump basically waged war on women during his presidency and rolled back, definitions of what domestic violence is. Basically stopped caring about passing a reauthorization of the Violence Against Women Act. And it's been sitting in what is called Mitch McConnell's graveyard for a long time now. And that's largely due to the fact that people were trying to pass a new version of the act that would close loopholes that are really problematic for victims of domestic violence, when somebody is convicted of a domestic violence crime, and if they live with the victim, they have restrictions on access to guns and firearms. However, if you live outside of that residence, that does not apply. And as we all know, that doesn't make any sense at all, because not everybody is living with their partner, if you will. And so this has been heavily lobbied against by the NRA, which I consider to be a domestic terrorist organization. And Trump, as we also know, is in bed with them and would, never want to go against what the NRA would like. And a lot of issues have arisen because of that. In Iowa in particular, Kim Reynolds took it upon herself to write new legislation to be passed through the Senate that basically doesn't, mention at all this new restriction that Democrats would like to pass, and actually pushes back on the sovereignty of Indigenous peoples that we have worked so hard to gain through the Violence Against Women Act. So the Violence Against Women Act has special provisions in it for Indigenous women, for immigrant women, for the LGBTQIA, community, because these communities are at much greater, have much greater chances of encountering violence in their lifetimes, both domestic and just random hate crimes as well. And so it's really important that Biden get the Violence Against Women Act reenacted very, very soon. That's why we're here today. We're urging for that to happen because there is so many important aspects to this act. It provides millions and millions of dollars across the country to tribal nations, to advocacy organizations, and into changing what's happening, the magnitude of what's happening in Indian country and the missing and murdered Indigenous women and relatives crisis. And it's really disturbing that we have this Operation Lady Justice right now that's taken the forefront when it should be the Violence Against Women Act, which took 25 years to craft into something really important and powerful, and one of the only places that we are allowed to use our judicial sovereignty to try non-tribal members. And I have absolute faith it will be reenacted very soon, as Biden was one of the original co-authors of this particular act. And we're just here to say, hurry up. Get this in office, get this going soon. So I'm going to pass it off to you, Chris, to introduce.
Yeah, for sure. Okay, thank you very much. So we have the family of Lenice Blackbird who is joining us, and they're all in one area, so it makes it better for them to present. So I pull them up right away. Hi.
Hi.
Can you guys hear? Can you hear us? Or can you hear me? Thank you so much for taking time out of your day today to talk about Lenice and just kind of the challenges you faced. So whoever wants to talk, please share, the story of Lenice Blackbird, where you're from, some of the challenges that you've met, and some of the uplifting things too as well.
Okay, well, first of all, my name is Nisha Sheridan. I want to thank you for, reaching out to us to, hear Lenice's story. We want everyone to, hear it, and, we want justice for her. These are my aunties right here, that was the big part of Lenice and the searching for her. I'll let my auntie Irma go first.
Could you tell how she? Well, first of all, I'm Lenny. I'm Arian. I'm Lenice's big sister. But in June, Lenice had caught COVID, and she was quarantined at the cabins at the Big Out Park here on the reservation. And she also had underlying health problems. She was diabetic. She also had cirrhosis. So we were, and we're a real close-knit family. We're a big family, and so she quarantined at our health department here. Quarantined her at the cabins because we have, there's a lot of us that live in our home, and in order for it to not be passed around, the others contracted. She was quarantined down there on June. It was like 24th. June 22nd. It was a Sunday. And she was calling to check in with my mom on a daily. And she was quarantined with her boyfriend, or this guy that she met in South Sioux and brought home with her. His name was Earl Swift Talk, and she was checking in at home with my mom. And at the same time, the health department they said they were checking on her, but things aren't adding up right now. My aunt, I'll have to talk to my aunt. She's the one who because Lenice was the baby, and she was she was shocked. She called my mom every day, and then pretty soon she start she was calling in from down at the park, and then pretty soon it quit, and they just felt something was wrong. It was unlike her. But I'll let my Aunt Irma take over. She's the one who encouraged my mom to keep searching and keep to keep looking and do what they had to do. But then we reached. Well, what, Irma?
First of all, I want to say thank you for allowing us this time. Lenice is a big part of our lives. I'm a mother. I have 7 children. Any of mine are gone more than 5 hours. I'm on the phone or I'm out looking for them. That's just the way I am. And when Lenise was placed down at the Big Out Park, I thought she was going to be taken care of. Otherwise, we could have kept her home and took care of her. But when she left us, I remember she called that morning checking in. And that's the last time it was on a Monday. That's the last time I heard her voice. From that day on, I kept telling her mother, did you check on Lenise? Yeah, but she's not answering her phone. We went down there, we couldn't get in. We went all over looking for help. We went to the law enforcement. We went to the emergency management or whatever they're called for COVID. We got no help. We went out Wednesday, me and my sister. We went to the city looking for her. We couldn't find her. We went again Thursday. Still nothing. So Friday, I took my sister Donna and Roxy. We went all over the city where she would be. And it was very unusual because when we went up there, we could find her just like that. We couldn't find her. So I told my other sister, get on the phone, post it, tell the family to get together. Let's go down there and look ourselves. So we went. It took us 20 minutes to find her body. I knew there was something wrong because it wasn't like her not calling. Not calling like she used to. She was Donna's baby. No matter what, she'd call. So we took it upon ourselves and went and looked for her. It didn't take us long to find her. But we couldn't get no help from our law enforcement or the COVID team because they were scared of COVID.
The missing persons report filed.
Yeah, and we filed a missing person report that Saturday morning. And that's when we went down there Saturday afternoon.
Well, they were supposed to meet us there.
Yes, the law enforcement was supposed to meet us at the Big Out Park, at 6.
Which they never came.
Which they never showed up. So we took it upon ourselves. They let us through. We went and we found her.
And the law enforcement here was they were the first agencies within our community to get the PPE for, because they were in close contact with our community, with people. So they were the first agencies to receive that material so that they can dress protective wear properly to conduct their business. And yet they refused to. They were scared of COVID. And her partner that was down there with her, he was still there when we got down there that Saturday. Myself and my boyfriend, we did approach. I think we were the ones that approached the cabin, and he came out, and my boyfriend kept saying, "Turn on your camera, turn on your camera." He's acting weird. He's acting funny, I know he's got something to do with it. Just turn on your camera. I was like, no, I don't want to record him, which I should have. I should have listened. But he told us Lanice got in the car, and I said, well, if she got in the car, did you actually hear a car door slam? And did you hear that car pull off? And he said no. And I said, well, then, how do you know? And then, because we all went out. Everybody went out in the park there. I first went down to the river, but then I went back to that cabin. And he was like, had his hands behind his back, and he was like, he was being really funny. He didn't. And they did arrest him. They took him into custody, and apparently they questioned him. And they took samples from the cabin, or like the mattress and stuff. Remind you, there's no running water in there. It's just a little small cabin with 2 small rooms towards the back of the cabin and a big open area, a fridge. They took her groceries and stuff down there. And with Lanice having cirrhosis, and she was swollen at the time that she was quarantined. When we feel they should have took her to the hospital.
Hospitalized her.
Her ammonia level at times would go high, and she would hallucinate and whatnot. That's kind of something that still lingers. Like, I'm wondering if she hallucinated and just said something wrong to him. They let him go, and currently it's still under investigation. We have gotten no answers. The preliminary autopsy report said she died of a heat stroke. When we found her, she was about
a long way,
maybe like 200 yards behind that cabin down there. It's like a backyard, a big backyard there, and then it goes down, and there's like a sand pit, like marshy sand pit there area. And my nephews came across her, and the way that they found her was she was laid on her back with her hands up above her head, like somebody drug her there. And with the weather being so hot the way it was, we knew Lanice didn't walk off. Lanice she couldn't stand being hot, especially if she was swollen with, if her ammonia levels were high and she was swollen. She would not dare walk in that weather. She would probably, if she was home here, she would probably just walk from the door to the car. So we knew she didn't walk out of there. But they kept giving my mom stories that, they seen her leaving a car, or the boy said she left in a car, she left with so and so. And see, she was active on Facebook. They said she died that Thursday. Well, Saturday morning, she was still active on Facebook till I believe 7:30 that morning. So, and we still never recovered her. We still never got her phone back. And what else was there that we didn't get back? Well, we didn't get her phone back. There was a guy. There was other campers on her. There's a guy that the FBI was supposed to interview, our police. Somebody was supposed to interview. They never ever interviewed him yet. It's like the FBI and the law enforcement here, they just like pushed it under the rug, like she's nobody, and she's our baby. She's not a nobody. And we don't have no answers, and it's hard, Our family dynamics is, our lives have changed forever, and right now, me and my mom just kind of started talking. My mom hasn't even really been home. She don't want to be home. And, things changed here. Home's not home anymore like it was. Because Lanice when she was here, me and her, we didn't have the best relationship. But, I have a little 8-year-old that she would have had a big helping hand in raising. And he always wants to know what happened. And I don't know what to tell him. I don't know how to tell him. And, our family, we're broken. And, I know we probably should reach out for help. And that's what I've been really thinking about. But, it's not the same anymore here. And we're not getting anywhere. It's like, we can't get a death certificate because it's still under investigation, but nobody's contacting us. Nobody's reaching out to us and asking us, you know, we don't even know who to contact regarding this investigation.
Yeah, go ahead.
That boy's back in, I came across him, but I was drinking at the time and I was right on Dakota Ave in South Sioux, so I didn't want to make a big scene. But he's walking around out there like nothing's wrong. But it's just, there's something had to have happened. But she couldn't have walked that far to where she was found, and especially in that, the way that area was, because Lanice she was scared of everything. She wouldn't have walked in tall grass like that. Especially by herself. And you know, there was a checkpoint here. There was people set up at the entryway there. Why didn't anybody see, hear, you know, anything? If they did, we don't know. You know, they're not telling us anything.
So it sounds like, you know, it's more of like a lack of leadership on a tribal and the federal, and it could, you know, as well as state. And, you know, we have either non-native perpetrators or native perpetrators that get away with this all the time. So I think my question to you is, how did you as a family, you know, you obviously are frustrated. So what has this brought to you as far as like, okay, we need to come together. We need to put, you know, our differences aside and we need to solve this. You know, we need to go find her. What has anything else come from that? I feel like, you know, especially with the tribal governments, that this conversation just needs to be had. We can't no longer just put it under the rug. We can't, you know, neglect it. We can't say, oh, he's my brother, or oh, she's my sister. Oh, that's my cousin. We can't do that no more. We have to hold each other accountable for our actions, right? So what are the things, I guess, what are the next steps for the family? I know you guys are grieving, and my condolences. And you know, we would be here to help you, to support, amplify your message in any way possible. But what are the next steps for you?
Well, we plan on going forward with this. I've been, you know, the past like a month or so, I've been staying home a lot, and I've been like, you know, because I know it's not home without her anymore, but I've been thinking about her, and you know, me and my mom, our relationship is just starting to get a little better now. You know, we were constantly arguing. My mom wasn't home all the time. But hopefully, since we're talking and stuff now, that we're gonna move forward with this and try to get answers and justice for Lanice. But here's my mom. She took, you know, she went to the council here and met with them on, you know, because she wanted answers. But here's my mom, Donna. She can speak with you a little more. They will help us.
And if you're not ready, please don't. If you're not ready to talk about it, I don't want you to feel uncomfortable. You don't have to. We can revisit this conversation later. I just don't want you to. Yeah, I don't want to re-traumatize. This is fairly new. This was obviously during the pandemic, so please do not feel like you have to share anything that you are not ready to share.
Okay, so how are you guys? How are you guys to help us? I mean, we're reaching out for help.
Yeah, so we have this platform, right? But we don't ever want to come in and say, oh, hey, like, we're going to make this about ourselves. No, what we do is we offer this platform, and whatever you need to get out there and share with the world, we can do that for you. That's what we do.
Because we did some candlelight.
Mm-hmm.
individuals, and I think we did a couple interviews
Mhm.
with the Sioux City Journal.
What's that? Or the Indian Times? Indian.com or something like that.
I think sometimes it takes a little bit more of a push, whether it's legislation, whether it's even just, you know, saying, hey, we want some answers. We need some answers right now. Like, you know, as uncomfortable as the conversation may be, it may point out something that was missed. It may point out some behaviors that need to be changed. But more or less, the conversation just needs to happen. How uncomfortable it is, it needs to happen. And that's why we're having this conversation today, is because we've seen the failure of the tribal governments. We've seen the failure of the federal system. We've seen the failure of the missing persons. We've consistently just fell through the cracks. So this is our time now as Native families to come together that have been affected by this, to come together and put our heads together and say, okay, this needs to stop. We need to figure out how we're gonna put an end to this epidemic or decrease it. I don't know if we'll entirely ever end it. I wish we would, but how are we going to go forward? Maybe having that conversation with the tribal governments and saying, hey, you know what? It's during a pandemic. We need to put these procedures in. We need to put these protocols in. We need to check on these people. You know, we need to do a questionnaire. Have they been victims? Are they currently a victim of domestic violence? Just something as simple as that to add that extra protection and to say, hey, we need to make sure that, you know, our women are safe, our men are safe, our children are safe, things like that. So that would be what we would be able to help in that and having those conversations, but also just you know, just offering the platform. So whatever message that you would like, that we can just help you amplify that.
And see, just like a couple of months ago, I experienced some domestic violence cops were called. They came, took my name, like said, okay, we'll get a hold of an advocate for you. Nobody's ever called. It happened again. So I reached out to somebody that was an advocate before, and he gave me a number. I called and never got a response. So I did not have, I mean, there's no support here for that at all. I mean, it's you know, I know there's a pandemic, but I mean, who's ever going to help? You know, there's no help here. There's our law enforcement is terrible. They're terrible here. They're just like with Ashley's case, you know, that voice, you know, that's our own relative. The perpetrator's our own relative, but I'm not. I you know, what happened was terrible to that girl, and you know, there's no help here. We can't get any help. Let them walk. They just let these guys walk around free. And
so that's what I'm you know, that's the challenge of it, right? As Native people, we don't get the help, right? So we have to do it ourselves. So that may be a conversation. And like I said, you guys have my phone number. I'm definitely down to have that conversation with you and just see what happens. You know, we had Cozy first, and then we also had Cozy, we had Ashley, and now we have Lanice, you know, all within a 6-month span, I want to say.
Yeah.
So yeah, I'm sorry, I don't mean to, we have Danielle waiting to close this out, but do you guys have any cash apps? Do you have any donations? Do you have any like GoFundMe pages? Is there any way that we can plug people into you as far as that kind of way? Or
well, we could set one up. I can set one up, a GoFundMe page as soon as we hang up.
Okay, for sure.
If you need our help with that, we're happy to do that as well.
Okay.
Yep, we can definitely do that, for sure.
And the other thing that we've been working on this past year is raising money for, you know, to aid and to provide mutual aid for COVID relief in Sioux City and the surrounding areas. And, you know, like this is actually not, this is also an issue of COVID, which is really sad to me because COVID has created these situations of isolation that resulted into this very tragic death. And, we want to help you with that. We want to do what we can to also like link this to the COVID work that we've been doing. So yes, we're here for you. And thank you for, sharing your story. It's been very meaningful to me. It's hard to hear. But, we just really appreciate you being here. And I'm sending you all the love I can right now.
Thank you.
And we'll be in contact. I live here in Sioux City, so it's not like I'm far away. So the conversation does need to happen. So thank you very much. Is there anything else that you would like to share? Otherwise, we will pull Danielle up to close us out with a prayer. And like I said, you guys have my phone number.
Anything else you guys want to share or no? You guys done?
So do you have any resources? Like, I know my mom's reached out to a lawyer. Just, like
legal help?
Yeah, like legal help. Like how do we get a hold of the FBI and ask them where they stand on this, on the investigation and stuff like that?
I think Christine may have some connections. I think one of our board members is an attorney. I don't know if she's a federal attorney, but
she's not.
But she's really great though. Yeah.
She can help us. She can point us in the right direction. Like we're constantly always like finding resources for people in our community and like, doing what we can to link them because we're not experts ourselves. We're not lawyers. We're advocates and we're doing everything we can to connect people with the people they should get the help from. But like I said, we do have, COVID resources. And so we really want to help you guys out with that. So we'll be in contact with you after the show to talk about that.
Okay.
And it looks like there's a Shelly Denny who just said our group has a lawyer also, she can help. So that's in the comment section. So maybe even just right there, even just sharing this
I'll follow up with Shelly as well after this, and we'll do what we can to get something. And this is why we're having this conversation today, because look what we did. We just brought to light the fact that you haven't been getting resources. I'm actually really upset about that right now. The fact that like nobody's been helping you and that it's coming out like right now at this moment. And it's because we're doing this that it's happening. And, the system was set up for us to fail, and we are here to fight that. So thank you again for being here. Hi.
Thank you very much.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
I just want to point out to everybody that self-care is highly important right now. This has been a pretty intense couple of hours, and please take advantage of the resources that we had spoken about earlier. If you feel, triggered in any way, and you feel like, even if you just feel like it's time to talk to somebody, if you go to our Facebook page and our Instagram page, our youth intern Keely put this together a couple days ago. I'm sorry, we don't have the Iowa and Nebraska resources up here yet, but we're working on it. And so you can call these numbers, and then you also have websites that you can go to find more information. And you know what? We're always here too to do what we can, because we're one of the few Indigenous groups in Iowa and Nebraska that is like really trying hard to get the word out about this. And so we just do what we can to connect people. So please message us through Facebook or Instagram if you have to. And I know that also Trish is really connected to a lot of these families in the area. And a lot of these people have her phone number. So, do that as well. You can even contact the Urban Native Center in Sioux City. And then, of course, Trish, you mentioned earlier the resource in Winnebago, was it?
I know there's the Morning Star Counseling as a resource. It might be a point of resources. Otherwise, the Winnebago Public Health Department, they're pretty good about sharing stuff like that. So, but yes, it's very unfortunate that, this is just, it just makes me so mad. This is not that far away from me, and this is all going on, it's time to have the conversation. It's time to, to really call it out. And yeah, it's time to address it. So
then, and that's why we're talking about this, because this issue, this issue, I don't like calling it an issue. I'm sorry, I hate when I do that. It's a crisis, and it's an epidemic. It's something that has been gone ignored for too long, and it's being heard in Canada. It's being heard in different parts of the country, but there are so many places where it's still not being elevated enough. I don't know why people are not taking, this like massive issue of like disproportionate amounts of Indigenous peoples being murdered and going missing, kids, Indigenous kids in cages at the border, our high skyrocketing suicide rates that have gone from 2009 until today, up 130% for Indigenous women in this country. I don't know why this is not like it just on everybody's radar. And it should be in Iowa and Nebraska as well, because there are Indigenous peoples here too that are facing these tragic statistics every single day. And yeah, that's what we're going to continue to do. And it is my honor right now to introduce our next guest. It's one of our fiercest organizers and sisters. And I'm just really glad to have you here today, Danielle, especially to close it out. Regina, our elder, was going to do some singing for us earlier today, but she's actually at home sick at the moment. She's okay. It's not COVID. It's really good to have you here right now, because you have always had that grounding presence to provide the prayer and the perspective that we need, moving on, because we need that right now. We need the prayers. We need the medicine. Thank you so much, Danielle.
Can you hear me? Can you hear me? Okay. My name's Danielle Wanati. My Meskwaki name is Biwani. I'm a member of the Meskwaki tribe, also known as Second Fox of the Mississippi in Iowa. I reside on the Meskwaki settlement, and I just wanted to pray for a little bit for everyone that was talking and all the individuals that this epidemic of missing and murdered Indigenous relatives has hit. It's not easy work, and it's going to take a toll on a lot of people, especially the families, the people who support these ones that find these loved ones. And we also have to remember, we have to acknowledge the land, because on the land is where our relatives are at, the missing and murdered ones, the ones that haven't been found yet. In each tribe, we have ceremonies to do when somebody dies. And sometimes when these people go missing, we don't get to do our duties of doing the ceremonies. So it's like everybody's on hold. But even in our cultures, we have to mourn. There's a process in order for us to go forward. So we have to pray for each other. Your hearts get heavy at times, but you have to keep going. We were never a people to give up, ever. And we've seen this through our perseverance in our culture and our language. It's tough work, but you have to remember that what you're doing is clearing the path for future generations. Our elders once did a lot of work to bring this to the forefront. We are now at a tipping point in our society and our communities where we have to take care of how we handle this next part, because it's a slippery slope that just doesn't affect Indigenous people. It is now coming for everybody. Black, brown, Mexican, Chinese, everybody. It doesn't discriminate. Times were getting hard this past year, but that doesn't mean that we forgot our loved ones. You have to keep looking. And sometimes you have to do this stuff alone. And that's what we pray for, is you, the ones that stand alone, and the families that support you guys with their funds, with their emotional support, with their spiritual support, through their prayers. Because in each culture, we talk about each other. We have a saying in my language, Jagenagmenagwe, all my relations. And all my relations, we don't know no borders. We don't know no walls. Even the people who are in prison still pray. even in Mexico, they're still indigenous. We pray. So I just ask that you all say a prayer for somebody, because this affects everybody. If it's not your immediate family, think of someone, one of these ones of their stories that were told. Think of their children, think of their grandparents. Think of future generations that this might be affecting if we don't change it now. And pray for the ones whose minds are clouded, who help make decisions on these laws that find our relatives that are missing and the ones who are murdered who don't get justices. Clear their minds and clear the pathway for us to get all these answers for these families and to help them find their loved ones. Because we all have to heal. It might take some time, but we're gonna get there. And that's all I can pray for, is people, our relatives around here. And I don't know, that's all I have to say.
Thank you so much, Danielle. I really appreciate you coming in and providing that power and that medicine at the end of this stream, because we really needed to close out with something like that. I'm going to get Trish up on here, and we are going to say with all the love we can, thank you to everybody that came on here today, and we will continue to meet like this as much as we can, and connect the dots and connect the people to where they got to be connected to, and get the resources we can.
Absolutely. I think after today, like I said, it's hard to have these conversations, but it's time to have them, and it's time to come up with proactive solutions. You know, I feel like a lot of this is reactive and it's not working. Otherwise, I feel like, you know, there would have been some solutions already, but they're not working for us. So we definitely have to find a way to do it ourselves. You know, we've been doing it for the longest time by ourselves, so why not, you know? Thank you to everyone that came on here. You know, we definitely will be reaching out. I will be following up with everyone just to see, you know, just to check in. You know, that's part of, you know, we're not just going to be an organization that comes in, tells your story, and then just leaves you by your side. It's not going to happen.
And a shout out to the people that couldn't make it today.
Yes, a big shout out. I know Regina got sick. She was supposed to be our musical guest, and then Stacy got sick too. Not sure what happened with Teely. It might have been something on our part as far as the communication. Yeah. But you know, nevertheless, you know, it's a hard conversation. It may be just that. So with that, thank you everyone. You can visit us at www.greatplainsaction.org. You can follow us on IG, Facebook, YouTube. We have a Snapchat, TikTok somewhere, but Great Plains Action Society. And we look forward to having more conversations like this. And yeah, just share this out, because you never know. These families might need help, and you might have somebody on your friends list, you might have somebody, you know, that has that connection that can help these families get connected. And yeah, let's continue the work.
I have to mihin.